Out.
All right, I think we're ready to go. My name is Mary Manzoni, and I would like to welcome everyone to the Maryland Disabilities Forum, where we will be discussing vital issues that impact the disability community. We're pleased to have you all here today as we engage with our U.S. Senate candidates on a wide range of topics that affect the lives of Marylanders with disabilities. Again, I'm Mary Manzoni, and I am board president of the Maryland Disabilities Forum. And on behalf of the board of directors for the Maryland Disabilities Forum and our sponsors, Maryland Association of Community Services, the Maryland Developmental Disability Council, the ARC of Maryland, Disability Rights Maryland, the League for People with Disabilities, and Maryland Works, we would like to welcome you today. The Maryland Disabilities Forum is a nonpartisan nonprofit organization dedicated to educating, empowering, and encouraging Marylanders with disabilities to exercise the right to vote. We appreciate the attendees for being here today. And before we get started, I want to go over a few ground rules while we're together today. First, please remain muted. Those who unmute during this forum may be removed from the Zoom without notice. We have a limited amount of time with our candidates, and we really want to hear from them, and we want them to share with us. Second, please practice civility and respect. Any remarks put into the chat that are perceived to be uncivil and disrespectful may result in the removal of persons from the Zoom. Now, it's my pleasure to get us started. It is essential to recognize that people with disabilities need and want to fully participate in the community. They want to live, work, shop, attend school, vote, and enjoy activities alongside their peers. Importantly, Marylanders with disabilities should not be forced into institutional settings like nursing homes or other non-community-based environments. Today, we will explore policies and initiatives that can help ensure a more inclusive and accessible Maryland. Together, we can advocate for a future where all people with disabilities can thrive in our communities. Thank you for being here to engage in this vital conversation. It's now my pleasure to introduce to you Matt Rice, Executive Director of People on the Go, who will be introducing former governor and current candidate for Senate, Honorable Larry Hogan.
Matt, you're muted.
Thank you, Mary. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Matt Rice. It is now my privilege to introduce Larry Hogan, the Honorable Larry Hogan, the former governor of Maryland. Larry Hogan is a lifelong resident of Maryland, a leader, and a businessman. During his 8 years as governor, Governor Hogan presided over one of the largest economic turnarounds in the country, taking Maryland from 49 out of 50 states in terms of economic growth to 6th in economic growth. Now, Governor Hogan is running for the U.S. Senate for the Republican Party. He remains committed to supporting all Marylanders and bringing an end to politics as usual and a common sense approach to governance. He resides in Anne Arundel County with his wife Yumi, where they are proud parents of 3 daughters and proud grandparents of 5 grandchildren. Please join me in welcoming Governor Larry Hogan.
Well, thank you very much, Matt and Mary. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to join you this afternoon. Matt, that was a great introduction. I appreciate that. It's wonderful to see some smiling faces on here this afternoon. I want to thank all of you who are involved in the community for all of the great work that you do, and I just thank you for the opportunity to be here with you today and answer some questions. I was, very proud to work with a lot of you during the 8 years that I was governor, and looking forward to this discussion this afternoon.
Well, thank you again, Governor Hogan, for joining us today. My name is Chris Mason Hale. I'm the community advocate for the Maryland Center for Developmental Disabilities at Kennedy Krieger Institute. I'll be introducing each section with an opening statement, followed by the question to be read by Ms. Tracy Wright, the Director of Training at People on the Go Maryland. We are both proud Marylanders with disabilities, and just to note, you will have up to 3 minutes to answer each of the questions. My first opening statement is for the commitment to funding disability services. As we consider the future of Medicaid funding and its role in supporting home and community-based services for people with disabilities, it is essential to understand how these services empower people with disabilities to live independently and fully engage with their communities.
Governor Hogan,
Yes.
if elected as senator, what steps would you take to advocate? Sorry about that.
That's okay.
What steps would you take to advocate for a federal budget to maintain essential Medicare funding for home and community-based services in Maryland for Marylanders with disabilities?
Well, thank you very much. That's a great question. First of all, as a senator, I would continue to support the community just like I did for 8 years as governor, and I would absolutely support legislation that would provide Medicaid funding for home and community-based services, and to support state agencies and nonprofits in Maryland. That would include continuing support for the programs that were created in my administration, like the statewide non-visual access initiative and the Maryland ABLE Act, which helped create accounts for individuals with disabilities to save money and to pay for qualified disability-related expenses without jeopardizing state or federal means-tested benefits. So absolutely, I would support legislation to provide the Medicaid funding.
Thank you for that response, Governor Hogan. We're moving on to supplemental security income. Many people with disabilities rely on supplemental security income and Medicaid benefits to live, learn, work, and play in their communities. To get SSI, you cannot have more than $2,000 in assets, an amount that has not changed since 1989. When SSI recipients get married, they can only have $3,000 in assets together. This is commonly referred to as the disability marriage penalty.
I'm having technical difficulties. Chris, could
I
you
can read
help?
the question, no worries. Governor Hogan, if elected senator, would you support legislation to eliminate the disability marriage penalty and ensure that people with disabilities can get married without losing the support they need and want? Please explain why or why not.
Yes, absolutely. Benefits for individuals with disabilities should never be penalized just because they get married. And I'll do everything I can in the Senate to protect those benefits that every Marylander deserves and that you rely on.
Right. Thank you for that response. We're going to move on to housing next. People with disabilities want housing that is safe, accessible, and affordable in the communities of their choice. However, many people with disabilities face restrictions on housing and are forced to live in communities where their needs cannot be met.
Chris, could you please?
Governor Hogan, if elected senator, what are some ideas you have for initiatives that would create more safe, accessible, and affordable housing for people with disabilities to live in communities they choose?
Well, first of all, affordability is the number one issue that I hear about out on the campaign trail. Not just people with disabilities, but everybody's concerned about the cost of housing, the cost of everything else. So in general, we're talking about accelerating housing construction and reducing out of control costs. And particularly, while I was governor, I tripled the amount of affordable housing in Maryland, more than 28,000 new affordable multifamily units across the state, including thousands that were specifically for people with disabilities. And I would absolutely support federal funding to try to replicate some of the very successful programs that we already accomplished here in Maryland. And in addition, the Maryland Partnership for Affordable Housing provided housing opportunities for people with disabilities who rely on Social Security and Social Security disability payments. And I think we need to continue to support those programs as well.
And thank you for that response. We're going to move on to employment now. Maryland and other states have passed laws that prohibit paying subminimum wages to people with disabilities. However, many Americans with disabilities still have no protections against subminimum wages. The Transformation to Competitive Integrated Employment Act, S.533, introduced last year, would prohibit paying subminimum wages across the United States.
Governor Hogan, if elected senator, would you support this legislation or similar legislation to end the practice of subminimum wage for people with disabilities?
Well, absolutely. Sorry.
Go ahead.
No. Finish the question. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Okay. Subminimum wage and discrimination nationwide against people with disabilities. Why or why not?
Yeah, absolutely. I will. I was very proud to be the first governor in America to do away with the sub-minimum wage. Maryland was a leader. We were a champion in this regard, and I will do exactly the same thing in the United States Senate so that people in every state will have the same opportunity, because you should never be discriminated against. And we want to create those kinds of opportunities, and you deserve the ability to participate fully in society, and you deserve fair compensation. And so Maryland was a leader in this regard, and other states are behind. But I think in the United States Senate, I would absolutely support legislation to try to make other states do what we've already done here in Maryland.
Thank you for that response. We're going to move on to education now. State and federal law require students with disabilities to be educated alongside their peers without disabilities to the greatest extent possible. In addition, research shows when students with disabilities learn in a general education classroom with their peers, they have better academic and employment outcomes than students who are segregated to separate spaces.
Governor Hogan, if elected to Senate, how would you ensure that legislation like the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act is fully funded for children with disabilities to have access to appropriate education alongside their peers without disabilities?
Well, I think it's critically important. One of the things that I was passionate about the whole time I was governor was making sure that every single child has the opportunity to get a great education, and that includes the disabilities community, to make sure that you have the ability to get the same exact opportunities as everyone else. And that's why we put record funding into the schools 8 years in a row. Pre-K and K through 12, and into our community colleges and our universities. And I'll continue to do everything I can to support equal access to education. for our folks in the disabilities community who deserves the same right as everybody else.
Thank you again for that response. We're moving on to our last section, transportation. People with disabilities use public transportation to get to work, go to school, and to socialize. Transportation is vital for the community and for community inclusion, and without it, people with disabilities struggle with isolation.
Governor Hogan, if elected to Senate, how would you advocate for more funding to create equitable transportation opportunities that are reliable and affordable for people with disabilities?
Well, this is obviously a critical issue for you and something that, again, I focused on. I was an infrastructure governor where we invested more in both roads and bridges and tunnels and airports and transit and accessible transportation. I also, as the chairman of the National Governors Association, launched a national infrastructure initiative that I got all 50 governors to agree to, and then helped pass, called together Republican and Democratic governors, senators, and congressmen to Annapolis to hammer out a bipartisan agreement and pass the bipartisan infrastructure bill, where we got agreement and got it passed and included more funding for things like making transportation more accessible. And it's a passion of mine that I focused on for 8 years that I'll continue to do everything I possibly can if I have the opportunity to represent you in the United States Senate.
This is Mary Manzoni, Governor Hogan, again, president of the Maryland Disabilities Forum and CEO at Maryland Works. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon, late morning. I wanted to give you a few minutes if you wanted to say anything else. We went through the questions and you were very diligent in reading them, or answering them, so I really appreciate your time today. Is there any remarks that you'd like to add?
Well, I'll just like to say again, Mary, thank you for providing this forum, and I want to thank so many people for joining this afternoon. And I know you all have an important decision to make in just a couple of weeks, 2 weeks from today. I think the people on this Zoom and the people of Maryland, they know me after 8 years, and I think you know that I'm going to be the kind of person that'll stand up and do what's right for all the people of Maryland. I'm going to be looking out for you, just like I was for the 8 years as governor, where we really expanded opportunities and we appointed a great Secretary of Disabilities, made it a cabinet level agency. I was proud to be your governor for 8 years, and I hope that you'll give me your consideration and your potential vote, because I think I can be the same kind of strong, independent leader that'll stand up and fight for you. So thank you so much for joining this afternoon and allowing me this opportunity to answer a few questions with you.
Well, thank you again. And what we will be doing following this forum is we will be cutting and pasting the questions from the chat, and I'll send them to both campaigns so that you have an idea of what the prominent issues are with the disability community. But again, we'd really like to thank you for your time and thank your team for coordinating with us. It really means a lot to the Maryland Disability Forum and Maryland, the state, the community that we're working with, that you joined us today. So thank you again.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, everybody.
Bye. Okay, everybody. So we're going to take a little bit of a break. I want to thank you guys again for your patience and understanding with the technical difficulties that we've had with, technology and kind of how that goes. But we are going to be showing a video created by Disability Rights Maryland, and it's going to focus on voting rights and accommodations at the polls. So we want to just let you know that that's going to be showing, and then Angela Alsobrooks, county executive for Prince George's County, will be joining us a little bit before 12:45, and we'll get started again. So thank you all again.
When you arrive to the voting location, you'll check in at the check-in area, and you'll either be receiving a ballot activation card or your ballot in a privacy sleeve. To use the ballot marking device, you'll insert the ballot activation card, and you can begin using the touchscreen to make your selections, or you can mark your ballot by hand at a privacy booth. Once your ballot selections are made, you'll review and scan your marked ballot into the scanning unit. Your vote is not cast until you scan your ballot. And before you leave, you'll receive an I voted sticker. Election judges, also called poll workers, direct voters through the voting experience and are pleased to be of assistance as needed. These judges assist voters with using the ballot marking device and scanning unit. They issue ballot activation cards or paper ballots and I voted stickers. Now we'll view a short video on the in-person voting process.
Hello, my name is Shakria Satterfield. I'm from the Maryland State Board of Elections, and we're going to do a walkthrough of a mock polling place. The first person our voters will meet when they come to a polling place will be our greeters. Our greeters will assist the voters and direct them which way to go through our voting process. The first station that the voter will come to will be our check-in table. Most of our voters will be the standard voter, but if we have a first-time voter or someone who may not be able to be found in the poll book, then they would be directed to our same-day registration judge. Additionally, we may have voters that show up to drop off their absentee ballots at the polling place. There will be a designated area for that as well. Our standard voter or a provisional voter will receive their voter authority card. If you have a provisional voter, they will be escorted over to the provisional voting station, where a provisional judge would help them vote through the provisional process. Now, our standard voter would receive their voter authority card, and they would go to the ballot issuing station, where the ballot issuing judge would let the voter know that there are two ways in which you can mark your ballot, either by hand or using the ballot marking device. If the voter decides to use the ballot marking device, then they would receive the ballot activation card. Once the voter has their ballot, should they choose to vote by hand, they will be directed over to one of our voting stations, where we will provide the voter with a pen so that they can complete their ballot. If the voter chooses to vote electronically using the ballot marking device, they would take their ballot activation card over to the ballot marking device, where we will have instructions for that voter as well as an additional judge in this area to assist the voter if needed. Now, whether the voter chooses to vote with the ballot marking device or by hand, one of the last stations the voter would proceed to would be the scanning unit. Remember, a ballot is not cast until it is scanned successfully through the scanning unit. Should the voter have any problems or issues, there will be a chief judge's area where they can come over and assist that voter. Once the voter has successfully scanned their ballot, the last judge that they would see would be our sticker judge, where they will receive an I voted sticker and go on about the rest of their day. Thank you.
And that is the in-person voting experience, whether you mark your paper ballot by hand at a privacy booth or use the ballot marking device to make your ballot selections. Now we'll go over using the ballot marking device in more detail. Once you receive your ballot activation card given to you by the election judge, you'll insert it in the lower right-hand corner, and then you'll make your selections by touching the screen. You can press the More button to see all candidates in each contest, and you can navigate through your ballot by pressing the Previous and Next buttons. You can also use a Braille embossed keypad and headphones or your own accessibility device to hear the choices and make selections. Finally, once you've completed marking your ballot, you review all the selections on the summary screen. If any changes are needed, just press the contest and be redirected to the selection screen for that contest. Once choices are confirmed, press print and remove the voted ballot. To cast your vote, scan your ballot activation card into the ballot scanner, where it will drop into the secure ballot box. Here is a more detailed video showing you how to use the ballot marking device.
Welcome to the ballot marking device, which can be used by all voters, including those with special needs, to mark their ballots. Please take a few moments to watch this video to learn how to mark your ballot quickly and easily. Step 1. Insert ballot activation card. First, insert the blank ballot activation card you received at check-in into the slot on the ballot marking device. Align the corner cut on the card with the corner cut on the unit as shown. Step 2. Touch selections. Next, make your selections on the touchscreen by touching the box with the candidate's name. Once chosen, your selection will change colors. To change a selection, touch the box with your new preference. You can easily navigate through the election contests by touching the options labeled Next and Previous. To cast a write-in vote, touch the write-in option to reveal a touchscreen keyboard. Then simply type the candidate's name and select Accept. If you have visual limitations, you can use the contrast option to change the screen to high contrast black and white. Selecting the zoom function makes the text appear larger on the screen. In addition, the ballot marking device is programmed to read the ballot to you. Headphones are provided, or you may use your own. A handheld keypad can be used to navigate the selections as the audio instructions guide you through the contest. You have the option to black out the screen to ensure privacy as you make your selections. Step 3. Verify selections. After you have made all of your selections, it's time to review them on screen to confirm your choices. To change a selection, touch it to return to that contest. Then, make your change and touch Next to return to the summary screen. The adjusted contest will remain highlighted on the summary screen. Once satisfied with your selections, print your card by navigating to the next screen. Print your voted ballot card by touching the Print Card option. Your printed ballot card will be returned to you from the same slot on the front of the ballot marking device. Step 4. Scan. Now it's time to insert your voted ballot card into the ballot scanner to cast your ballot. Place your printed card into the appropriate area of the tabulator. For more information, visit the Maryland Board of Elections website at elections.maryland.gov.
This video was made in 2016 when Maryland first procured the new voting system. However, we still use the hashtag MDVotes. In review, Maryland is committed to making voting accessible to all voters. All early voting centers in Maryland are accessible to voters with disabilities. The BMD is available at all voting locations and early voting centers and in election day polling places. The headset and keypad of the BMD enables blind voters and voters with low vision to vote by listening to the audio ballot and making their selections by using the keypad, including high contrast and large print functions, and the ability to connect to other assistive devices. To use the audio ballot, just ask an election judge. They are there to answer your questions and provide any assistance if needed.
Together We're Better, from the ARC Maryland.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Andy Culp. At this time, we're going to take a very short break, but please stay connected to the Zoom. And when the Alsobrooks campaign joins the Zoom, we will get started with part 2 of our forum today. Thank you again for being here. Luke, would you play some music while we wait?
Music to vote by.
Luke, if you could. Welcome back, everybody. I hope you had a nice break, and I hope the Disability Rights Maryland video was helpful and informational for you all.
Mary, hold on. I need to spotlight the interpreters.
Okay.
Never mind. We're good.
Okay. Thank you. Welcome back. I hope you guys found the video informational so that you're ready to get out and vote. I believe we have County Executive Senate candidate Alsobrooks on the line. Can we confirm before I get started?
Mary, I see that a person from her campaign is here, but I do not see that the candidate is here yet.
Okay. She should, I just got a text. She should be joining soon. I appreciate your all's patience.
Mary, can I? Yeah.
I think we're ready to get started. Welcome back, everyone. I just want to confirm that we have County Executive Senate candidate Alsobrooks on the line before we get started.
Yes, I'm here. Good afternoon, everyone.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you for joining a few minutes early. We really appreciate you doing that.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, great. So welcome back to the Maryland Disabilities Forum, Candidates for Senate Voters Forum. Again, I'm Mary Manzoni. I am the CEO at Maryland Works, but more importantly, today I'm the president of the board of the Maryland Disabilities Forum. So I just want to thank the board of directors for the Maryland Disabilities Forum and our sponsors, the Maryland Association of Community Services, the Maryland Developmental Disability Council, the ARC of Maryland, Disability Rights Maryland, the League for People with Disabilities, and Maryland Works for your sponsorship. As previously stated, it is essential to recognize that people with disabilities need and want to fully participate in their communities. They want to live, work, shop, attend school, vote, and enjoy activities alongside their peers. Importantly, Marylanders with disabilities should not be forced into institutional settings like nursing homes or other non-community-based environments. Today, we will explore policies and initiatives that can help ensure a more inclusive and accessible Maryland. Together, we can advocate for a future where all people with disabilities can thrive in our communities. Thank you for being here to engage in this vital conversation. It's now my pleasure to introduce to you Matt Rice, Executive Director of People on the Go, who will be introducing Prince George's County Executive and current candidate for Senate, Honorable Angela Alsobrooks.
Thank you, Mary. I am Matt Rice. I have the privilege of introducing Senate candidate and current Prince George's County Executive, Angela Alsobrooks. County Executive Alsobrooks is a lifelong Marylander, born and raised in Prince George's County. She learned from a young age from her great-grandmother and other family members not to sit on the sidelines and to look after her neighbors and her community. She is a graduate of Duke University and the University of Maryland School of Law. After graduation, County Executive Alsobrooks heard the call of public service. She served as a law clerk in both the Howard County and Baltimore City circuit court systems before holding a wide variety of positions in the Prince George's County government. She was elected the first assistant state attorney to investigate domestic violence cases full time. She would later go on to become the first female state's attorney and the youngest ever state's attorney in Prince George's County to hold that position. Now she is running as the Democratic candidate for the U.S. Senate seat in the state of Maryland. County Executive Alsobrooks is committed to fighting for all Marylanders and making sure that Maryland's future is bright. Please join me in welcoming County Executive and Democratic Senate candidate Angela Alsobrooks.
Thank you so much, Matt, for that introduction, and also thank you so much, Mary, for having me. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me as a part of the forum.
Thank you for joining us today, County Executive Alsobrooks. My name is Chris Mason Hale.
Go ahead. Okay, Ms. Brooks, I've been seeing your
Hold on.
Thank you. My name is Chris Mason Hale, and I'm the community advocate for the Maryland Center for Developmental Disabilities at Kennedy Krieger Institute. I will be introducing each question today with an opening statement, followed by the question to be read by Ms. Leanna Brown, a board member and current member at People on the Go Maryland. We are both proud Marylanders with disabilities, and just to note, you will have up to 3 minutes to answer each question. My first opening statement is for the commitment to funding disability services. As we consider the future of Medicaid funding and its role in supporting home and community-based services for people with disabilities, it is essential to understand how these services empower people with disabilities to live independently and fully engage with their communities.
Hello, County Executive Alsobrooks. If elected as Senator, what steps would you take to advocate that the federal budget provides essential Medicaid funding for home and base community services to the state agencies and nonprofits in Maryland that support people with disabilities?
Well, thank you so much, first of all, to Liana, and thank you also, Chris, for the question. And again, hello to everyone. It has been my honor to serve for the last 27 years. I've been in public service because I believe in our communities. I believe every person in our community deserves to live to their fullest potential. And that includes those with disabilities in our community. I don't think we have any disposable humans. I think all of us are valuable, and it would be as your United States Senator, a priority to ensure that I am continuing to bring back resources to people all across our state so that they can live to their fullest potential. That includes home and community-based services. I will be continuing to support our delegation. I understand that they have most recently brought back $13.9 million for home and community-based services. And I'm going to be working to bring back additional resources to ensure that people have what they need in terms of housing, job opportunities, transportation, and other ways to really fully participate and be as integrated in our communities as possible. So I will also be working with soon to be President Kamala Harris to ensure that we are growing the resources made available through things like Medicaid, and also making sure that Medicare is fully funded so that we can provide the kind of care that is needed in the home. And these will be some priorities for me, is to make sure that we're continuing to support the funding that is necessary, and making sure that all of our members of our disabilities community are fully integrated throughout our communities.
Thank you, County Executive, for that response. Moving on to supplemental security income. Many people with disabilities rely on supplemental security income, SSI, and Medicaid benefits to live, learn, work, and play in their communities. To get SSI, you cannot have more than $2,000 in assets, an amount that has not changed since 1989. When SSI recipients get married, they can only have $3,000 in assets together. This is commonly referred to as the disability marriage penalty.
County Executive Alsobrooks, if elected senator, would you support legislation to eliminate the disability marriage penalty and ensure that people with disabilities can get married without losing the supports they need and want? Please explain why or why not.
Oh, I absolutely will support legislation that would eliminate the marriage penalty. You know, I happen to believe that marriage is important and sacred, and believe that particular penalty is outdated, that it needs to change. The fact of the matter is, the numbers that you quoted, the $3,000 for those who are married and $2,000 single, if it had really grown to inflation, I think we'd be really looking at a benefit that was closer to $10,000 for individuals and probably around $17,000 for those who are married. So I would absolutely support legislation to eliminate the penalty that you described, and again would be supportive of the disabilities community receiving the resources that they need, and to prevent discrimination from occurring.
Thank you again for that response. We're moving on to housing now. People with disabilities want housing that is safe, accessible, and affordable in the communities of their choice. However, many people with disabilities face restrictions on housing and are faced to live where their needs cannot be met.
County Executive Alsobrooks, if elected senator, what are some ideas you have for initiatives that would create more safe, accessible, and affordable housing for people with disabilities to live in the community they choose?
Yes, thank you. So you know what, housing is fundamental to living a productive life. To have housing that is safe, to have housing that is comfortable and conducive to living is really important. And I'll work to ensure that members of our disabilities community have the housing that they need and have the funding that they need to have quality housing. It's been a priority of mine as county executive to invest in housing. We've done so through a number of programs, the Housing Investment Trust Fund. We've worked also with the right of first refusal to preserve affordability and to grow the housing stock of workforce housing. But I can tell you that it is a really personal issue. I have a mother who has been ill, who's oxygen dependent and has a number of other challenges, and being able to live in your home is going to be important. So I support the Vice President's proposal to make an investment in Medicare that would allow people to have the care they need in their home. I think this is going to be really important to fund that kind of care. and to make sure that members of our disability community, as you've mentioned, can live safely and live productively in places where they choose to live. And I'll be working to make sure that that kind of funding is available to make it happen.
Thank you, County Executive, for that response. We're moving on to employment. Maryland and other states have passed laws that prohibit paying subminimum wages to people with disabilities. However, many Americans with disabilities still have no protections against subminimum wages. The Transformation to Competitive Integrated Employment Act, S.533, introduced last year, would prohibit paying subminimum wages across the United States.
County Executive Alsobrooks, if you elected senator, would you support the legislation or similar legislation, to end the practice of sub-minimum pay for workers with disabilities and wage discrimination nationwide against workers with disabilities? Please explain why or why not.
Yes, I would. I agree wholeheartedly that we really cannot tolerate the sub-minimum wage culture, discrimination against those with disabilities where wages are concerned. I'll be working constantly to ensure that we have a system where those with disabilities can work in spaces where they are treated with respect and fairness. And we'll be working also to protect their wages. Not only making sure that they're not receiving sub-minimum wages, but making sure that we are also, increasing the minimum wage. I supported the $15 minimum wage in Maryland, and I would support it also on the federal level, indexed to inflation. You should know that that my opponent in this race vetoed minimum wage. He vetoed paid and family medical leave. He vetoed also a prescription affordability board that would have allowed people to afford the cost of prescription drug medication. So he is quite the opposite. And I support also things like the PRO Act that allows workers to have certain benefits in office, while working, to have protections for workers. And he does not support the PRO Act either. So I am pro-worker. I will be supporting those who are in the disabilities community. In fact, I started a program in the government called Pathways to Government, one of the only ones in the state that sets aside jobs for members of the disabilities community. Actually have had individuals in my direct office, county executive's office, who have developmental disabilities, who work in the government. And so I believe in not only integrating, but supporting members of our disabilities community throughout the government. And I certainly will be fighting to make sure that they have fair wages.
Thank you for that response. Moving on to education now. State and federal law requires students with disabilities to be educated alongside their peers without disabilities to the greatest extent possible. In addition, research shows when students with disabilities learn in a general education classroom with their peers, they have better academic and employment outcomes than students who are segregated to separate places.
County Executive Alsobrooks, if elected senator, how will you ensure that legislation like the Individuals with Disabilities, Education Act is fully funded so children with disabilities have access to an appropriate education alongside their peers without disabilities?
I believe every person deserves to have a quality education without respect for disabilities, that we have to fund their education. I'm the mother of a 19-year-old daughter, and I know how important it is that every person have the opportunity to have what they need. I was a person who had attention deficit disorder growing up, and I know that that having the sort of supports that are necessary for people to succeed and education is going to be really important. So I will support the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act, ensuring that we are covering the cost of education for individuals who have disabilities, and making sure that we allow every student to reach their greatest potential. Now, I can tell you that my opponent in the race has not supported education funding. In fact, he vetoed education funding in the state of Maryland, the Blueprint for Maryland's Future. And a large part of what that particular legislation features is students with disabilities. Prince George's County happens to have one of the highest rates of students with disabilities in the state. And so we need that kind of funding, and that's true for other parts of the state as well. But he vetoed critical legislation that would have allowed us to equalize the education offered to students of varying backgrounds. But I in the Senate will be supporting the Individuals with Disabilities Act and supporting making sure that every child has an adequate and an exceptional education so that they can reach their greatest potential.
Thank you, County Executive, for that response. We are moving on to our last section now, transportation. People with disabilities use public transportation to get to work, go to school, and to socialize. Transportation is vital for community inclusion, and without it, people with disabilities struggle with isolation.
County Executive Alsobrooks, if elected senator, how would you advocate for more federal support to create equitable transportation opportunities that are reliable and affordable for people with disabilities?
Well, I think transportation is key to having a successful society. And I know that transportation is also really important for members of our disabilities community. It's really important for seniors to have accessible transportation to help them get to jobs and opportunities, as well as to live a productive and full life. It's the reason that I've supported funding around transit, everything from the Blue Line Corridor, where we made a $400 million investment, to working with our delegation to also purchase a fleet of electric vehicles. So I have invested heavily in transportation and will continue to do so. We've invested around the New Carrollton Metro also, but I'm going to be working as a senator to increase the infrastructure and transportation dollars that come back to our state so that we can continue to grow transportation and make sure that we are also doing so in a way that is equitable. It is important to note, I know someone took issue with me noting the difference in my record and my opponents, but I think it's important for you to know that Governor Hogan sent back $900 million in federal funding that came to fund the Red Line in Baltimore, which would have been a critical transportation opportunity for people, not only to attract businesses to Baltimore, but to allow people to simply get to those opportunities. I won't be sending money back to the federal government. I'm going to be urging that we bring every dollar to different parts of our state to invest in transit. Everything from here in the Metro Washington area and beyond Baltimore. I've been to the Eastern Shore and to rural parts of the state where we also see that the transportation options are of concern. There are places in Western Maryland that don't have Lyft and Uber and other things, but we're going to have to continue to invest in transit, including WMATA, to make sure that our transit system is viable and that it continues to serve the needs of our disabilities community and others. So I'll continue investing in transportation and doing so along with our delegation.
That concludes our questions. So I just want to take this time to thank the Honorable Angela Alsobrooks for being with us today. Thank you to you and your team. We truly appreciate your remarks and for spending time with us today. And thank you for joining a few minutes early. That was really great.
Thank you so much for having me, everyone.
Before I pass it over to Matt Rice to close us out, I wanted to see if you wanted to give any closing remarks this morning or this afternoon.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on the call today, and thank you for all of you do to ensure that every member of our community, most especially those in our disabilities communities, feel heard and felt and seen, loved and provided for. I think it's the obligation not only of our neighbors to take care of every one of us, but those who are in elective service to make sure that we are caring for the needs of every member of our community. It is not just that we owe a debt of gratitude to our disabilities community, but we recognize how much you offer to all of us as well. What you offer to our families and to our communities, the valuable role you play in the workplace and in arts and other things. It is the case that there's value in every member of our community, and I feel that the disabilities community has so much to offer. So I'll continue to work along with other members of our elected office, elect Governor Moore and our federal delegation to bring back the transportation dollars to work to make sure that healthcare is fully funded, that you have the housing that addresses your needs, and that you have the education as well, the opportunity to also achieve your dreams and the dreams of your children. So thank you to all of you for what you do every day to add to our communities. We do all of this together, and I ask you for your support. I would be a horrible candidate if I didn't ask you for your vote. I've enjoyed serving for the last 27 years in public service, and will certainly continue to fight hard for our families. So thank you so much. God bless you all, and thank you for having me today.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you again, candidate Alsobrooks. I'd like to thank both of the candidates and their teams for participating in today's event. This concludes the Maryland Disabilities Forum on the candidates for U.S. Senate. Please remember that Marylanders with disabilities make up 24% of Maryland eligible electorate. So we are a powerful voting bloc. So I encourage you to go and vote, make your voice heard. The power is in your hands to decide the course that Maryland will take. You can vote in person between October 24th and October 31st. Please note that dates and times may vary depending on where you live. And of course, election day is November 5th. So go and rock the vote. Thank you all, and thank you to the Maryland Disabilities Forum and our sponsors.